One glance at a beholder is enough to assess its foul and otherworldly nature. Aggressive, hateful, and greedy, these aberrations dismiss all other creatures as lesser beings, toying with them or destroying them as they choose.
Hey, I'm Sean, one half of the Printing Brothers, and welcome to our series where we 3D print and paint every monster in the Monster Manual. Speaking of the Monster Manual, here it is right here, and take a look at what's on the very front cover. The Beholder, one of D&D's most iconic monsters. There's a lot that I want to go over in this episode, so here's what I'm going to cover. Firstly, I'm going to talk about my paint job for this Beholder model, how I went about making my Beholder unique. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the lore and history behind the Beholder. And lastly, I'm going to go over what makes the Beholder stat block one of the best in the entire Monster Manual.
But before all of that, this Beholder model that we're using today is from Epics in Stuffs on my mini factory. It's this guy named Lance, and he does a lot of good work. Check him out in the description below. So let's talk about my paint job for this model. Now, Anthony has painted a Beholder in the past, and it looks amazing. Definitely one of his best miniatures that he's ever painted, in my opinion. That's kind of my competition for this episode, and the massive shadow that's looming over me in the build-up to painting this monster. So right off the bat, I want to differentiate my model from Anthony's. My goal is not to make mine look better, but to instead just make it different. The first thing I'm going to do in that regard is put a lot of work into making an interesting base. Not every model has a dynamic base, nor do they need them. Most models that we have actually just have blank bases, which make them versatile. A mini with a blank base could be used in snow or in a forest. It's all the same. A mini with a unique base is special though, it differentiates them. For my base, I wanted to create a cave surface with characters on it that have been slain by this Beholder. One of the Beholder's mini ray attacks is the Disintegration Ray, so I created a pile of ashes that used to be an adventurer. And this mini that had a misprint was begging to have his hand cut off and used for something. I also cut this poor fellow in half and made his guts out of hot glue. And I think those two things looked really good and really added to the overall look of Beholder. Now for the actual Beholder, I decided to make it red. I typically think of Beholders as being either blue or purple, and I wanted to do something different, like I said. I was going to make the inside of the eye stalks a lighter red or maybe even a brown, but I decided to try out blue instead, and I really think that created a nice contrast. Now as I continue to paint, let's move on to talking about the lore and history behind the Beholder. The Beholder is one of the few D&D monsters that is wholly original. It was not based on mythology, it was created from scratch. To learn a little bit more, let's go back to the very beginning of D&D. In the early 1970s, Gary Gygax, Don Kay, Robert Kuntz, and Terry Kuntz, along with Gygax's two children, played an early version of D&D together. That game took place in a setting called Greyhawk. Now, it's Gary Gygax and Don Kay who later founded Tactical Studies Rules, or TSR, which would go on to publish the very first version of D&D in 1974. The very next year, the first supplement book for D&D came out, titled Greyhawk, and it was written by Gary Gygax and Robert Kuntz. It is in this supplement that the Beholder makes its debut, and on the front cover no less. Now, Terry Kuntz initially came up with the concept for the Beholder, and Gary Gygax added more details to the idea so that it could be used in Greyhawk. In the Greyhawk supplement, Beholders are described as 3-foot spheres with 10 eye stalks. Other than that, there's not much information about it in this supplement, but the Beholder would go on to be fleshed out more and more as it appeared in every new version of D&D. It's one of the few D&D monsters that belonged to TSR and now Wizards of the Coast. It is their intellectual property, and so it was not released with D&D's open game license.
Thanks for watching this episode. Subscribe if you want to see more, and share with anyone that you think might enjoy as well.
Alright, that's enough history. Let's talk about the actual lore. And it's pretty interesting. Beholders are extremely paranoid creatures. They believe that someone or something is always scheming against them, even when there isn't. You see, Beholders are also very vain. They believe that their form is the ideal perfect form, and any deviation from it is disgusting. This extends even to other beholders. Every beholder is a single entity. They do not have partnerships or relationships with other beholders. The closest they come to that is having servants. Each beholder believes themselves to be the most intelligent, magical, powerful, and overall best creature in all of existence. Obviously, this can't be true for all of them, and I don't actually think it's true for any of them. Many other monsters in the Monster Manual are more powerful than the Beholder. Certainly, a Tarrasque could destroy a Beholder easily, but it is certainly true that every Beholder's ego is bigger than, well, even a Tarrasque. That ego is really what makes the Beholder interesting. It's not just a massive creature that you fight. Beholders have thoughts and feelings that can be used against them. There's a really funny Beholder character in Baldur's Gate 2, where you kind of outsmart him in a really funny way. It's a really memorable encounter, and it's stuck with me ever since I played it. So you don't just have to keep Beholders to combat encounters. But speaking of combat encounters, let's talk about what makes the Beholder stat block so great. And it's really simple, actually. It's the eye rays. Every turn of combat, the Beholder uses 3 random eye rays. There are 10 total rays that it could possibly shoot, each one potentially creating a difficult scenario for the party to solve. Some particularly interesting rays include the sleep ray. If a character fails a wisdom save, they fall asleep. They can be woken up if they take damage, or if another creature uses its action to wake them. So does a party member waste their action to wake their sleeping companion? Or do they deal damage to them, maybe cast a magic missile and send just one of the missiles to wake them? You can see how that ray could be interesting. There's also the telekinetic ray. If a character fails a strength save, the Beholder moves them 30 feet in any direction, and also restrains them with a telekinetic grip. This ray has a lot of interesting possibilities, especially if the DM creates an interesting environment to fight the Beholder in. There's also the disintegration ray and the death ray. These are definitely the most frightening of the rays, despite there being a fear ray. Both deal a lot of damage, an average of 45 for the disintegration ray and 55 for the death ray. And they have a good chance of killing a character outright. Now, I usually don't like instant kill abilities in D&D, but what's nice about these rays is that they don't just kill someone outright when they fail a save, it's based on the damage dealt. As a DM, you can definitely make these rays a cool moment. Rolling the damage in front of the players makes it even more intense. This is a Beholder that the party is fighting. It's supposed to be intimidating, and these 2 rays go a long way in making that a reality. The Beholder also has a center eye, which gives off an anti-magic field. This makes positioning extremely important in the fight, especially for magical characters. Overall, the randomness of the eye rays makes the Beholder an innately interesting encounter without even building a unique scenario for it. Now you build a scenario around it, and you've got an awesome session on your hands. So what do you think about the Beholder? It's for sure one of the most iconic D&D monsters, if not the most. I think maybe the dragon is the only one that tops it. But of course, the dragon was not a unique thing to just D&D. The Beholder is definitely one of my favorite monsters. It's so unique and creepy, just the concept alone. And I had a lot of fun painting this Beholder and making it my own. So let's take a look at the final paint job. I'm overall happy with how this model came out. I wouldn't say it's better than Anthony's Beholder, but that was never the goal for this project. This is my Beholder, and it looks pretty cool. I'm most proud of the base. It looks sufficiently grotesque. Tell me what you think about it in the comments below. And if you want to see us continue this series, subscribe. The blights are up next, which I will also be painting. We're also currently working on our next actual play series, which we're really excited to show you guys. Thanks for watching.